Good evening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the film. For those of you who screened the film at 7 o'clock, I thought it was an amazing film, great storytelling, really fantastic visuals. Made me want to go up there right now. Made me want summer a little faster, so so I didn't have to enjoy it by dog sled. But some of you may enjoy it in the winter as well. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that I am broadcasting from Saskatoon, and that's in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. And all of you can recognize where you fit into the treaty territories. And I'd like to welcome our special guest, Ian Toews. He is the president, producer, director, and cinematographer at 291 Film Company. We have screened a few of their films in the past, and they've all been fantastic. And as you just saw, if you watched the film at 7 o'clock, this one is no different. Also a great film. Now, Ian has been making films and television series since 1996. His works are primarily concerned with the natural environment. He's a producer, director, and director of photography of more than 80 television episodes, 7 short films, and 8 full-length documentaries, including the Gemini Award-winning series Landscape as Muse and the Canadian Screen Award-nominated theatrical feature and digital media project Bugs on the Menu. Other productions include Victor Chikansky, The Gardener's Universe, which was also a Lee Award nominee for Best Cinematography, Etienne Heldeli, Caribou Eaters, a 2020 Canadian Screen Award nominee for Best Documentary Program, and 3 seasons of the documentary series Ageless Gardens, a 2022 Canadian Screen Award nominee. His latest series, Visionary Gardeners, will premiere on Vision TV in 2022. So thank you very much, Ian, for taking the time to be with us. I know you're a very, very busy person. If that introduction was any indication of what your life is like. I guess one quick thing for those of you who didn't get the chance to watch the film yet, or if you'd like to watch it again, the code that was sent out to you is going to expire on the 28th, but you can watch it as many times as you'd like up until the 28th. So you still have time. So when I was watching the film, I couldn't help as a botanist that I know that area is just so huge and relatively unexplored by other botanists, and I was sure that there are bound to be some rare plant populations in there, which made me want to visit that area all the more. So I've got a few questions for Ian, but I would like all of you to ask your questions in the chat. So if you drag your cursor down to the bottom, there should be a little menu that comes up for you, and one of those options should be chat. And then you can just type your message into the chat. I'll find your comment or your question, and we can go from there. So one of the questions, and I thought about this, as somebody who's in environmental science, who's a biologist, when I was watching the film, and it's something I always think about when I'm working on projects for the Native Plant Society of Saskatchewan, because we're trying to engage people in conservation and try and protect these special areas. I thought, what can the average person do to help protect this ecosystem and ensure its future? What are your thoughts on that, Ian? And what did you pick up from the locals?
Yeah, I think what you said was kind of connected to the origin story of the film. We had gone in there for another film series we were doing, based mostly on curiosity of what the region would be. We thought it would be an interesting place to visit. This is now, I'm talking about maybe 17 or 18 years ago, thinking the Delta was probably a unique place, but we had no information about what it's all about. The internet in itself was in its infancy that, 17, 18 years ago. So we went in there to find out what the place was like, and we got local guides to take us through. One of those guys ended up in our film, Gary Carrier, of course. But I'm getting to the answer of your question, but I think what compelled the film to be made was when Gary took us around on that other film, he gave an impassioned speech, which he's known for. And he said, this is a beautiful place. Nobody seems to know about it. And I said, well, you don't have to tell me. I've been with you for 4 or 5 days, Gary. And he said, we need everyone to know about it. People need to know it exists. Without anybody knowing this, we won't have any preservation to speak of. I said, I couldn't agree more. And then, so we set the wheels in motion to try to get the project up and running. And about a year and a half later, we got the thing started, and another year after that, we were done. So it worked out really well. But I think awareness is the entire thing for the Saskatchewan River Delta, as it is maybe with all nature. I mean, when people realize something's beautiful and special, their hearts warm to it, and then the idea of conservation is a lot easier to put your heart around rather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got a question from Beckett Stark. He says, hi Ian, beautiful cinematography. I'm wondering what camera/lens combo did you shoot it on? Also, what do you shoot on now?
Mm-hmm. Well, back in the old days, we shot on that mostly was all shot on the Sony F900, which was the primary camera at the time for documentaries. Planet Earth, the first iteration of Planet Earth, most of it was shot on that camera. The first iteration, there's so many now. And then after we shot, there was no drones, for instance. We shot from fixed wing aircraft. We couldn't get helicopters in there. So you see the few aerial shots are all very bouncy. But it's a different story these days. If I was in there now, I would go in with a drone and just sit with my cell phone drone and fly all over the place. Nowadays, I shoot on a different camera, Area Alexa, it's called. It's a larger cinema camera. And it's already getting old, so we're probably looking to replace that with something newer.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
I might add my first visit in there for the other film, for Landscape is Muse, we shot, oh no, we didn't. I was going to say we shot it on film, but we didn't. We had just made the transition. I'm old enough that our early documentaries were shot on film. So I'm seeing a lot of generational changes.
I'm with you. My first good camera was a film camera. So yeah. Another question here. Tell me something that you observed or felt when visiting the Delta that was difficult to convey in the film, or that people may not fully appreciate.
That's a good question. There's a lot of things. I think at first you're kind of overcome with the beauty of it and the immensity of it and the mystery of it. It's very, very hard to get your bearings when you're in the middle of the Delta. Everything is quite homogeneous. There's phragmites everywhere, and then there's water everywhere, and it's obviously a marshy area. It's very hard to know where you are, which is really quite beautiful, and in that the sort of mystery that it creates in your feelings, So I think that's a big part of it. The other thing that's hard to convey is which we tried to do in the film, and I think we did to some extent, but you could never say enough about how much the place means to the people from there and how important it has been. And also something we really didn't touch on is that the Delta is a very dynamic place. All that geography and geology and biology is in a constant state of movement and flux. The Delta is evolving and changing shape, and different rivers are drying out and new ones are emerging, and water is changing direction and stopping, and trees rise up out of the marshes. So for the folks that live up there and have lived up there for centuries, you hear stories about how it used to be 60 years ago or 50 years ago or 20 years ago, and it's all so dynamic. How do you even explain that? I mean, it's just everything's constantly changing, and it's still changing, and they're still, people up there are still fearful about all the changes that are coming. But that's the dynamic nature of a delta, which is now, as you know from the film, exacerbated by the introduction of a dam, but that's another part of the discussion.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably have questions around that as well. Yeah. So another question here. We heard some of the local people's stories, and how can we advance truth and reconciliation in the context of the Indigenous communities of the Delta?
Well, I wish I knew. I mean, the prescription is certainly probably starts first and foremost with respect and listening. That's a big part of Aboriginal cultures for sure. And I mean that's probably the best we can all do. And that respect. I mean, they welcome visitors into the Delta, obviously. So that respect can be translated into sort of ecotourism and visits into the Delta and raising that understanding. And everybody there will always tell you the more you know about the place, the more you love it. I guess that's probably my best answer.
All right. Another question here. What was your favorite thing about the Delta and why?
Yeah, there's boy, I'm kind of going into my memories trying to remember some of the it really, I think I alluded to it earlier, that just the vastness of it all and the mystery of it. I mean, there's places in there because it's so dynamic and changing. There's a lot of places in there that have never been traveled, in spite of a lot of people, going through in their boats and getting around in snowmobiles in the winter. There's still a lot of areas that are just sort of untouched by virtue of the shifting landscape. Again, the vastness, the mystery of it all, the wilderness component of it. It's really quite a special place. And when you're guided by a local person who knows it, that adds another level. When Gary's trucking around all these places and he's just sitting there steering his boat through these little narrow passageways, and you're just like, where are we? How can he know where we're going? It's quite remarkable to see that kind of local knowledge in full effect.
Yeah, yeah. I can try and put myself in your shoes there, and I'd probably be thinking the same thing. Yeah, like
Yeah.
please don't leave me because I'm totally lost. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. So one of the questions I had. I've got another question here. Well, I'll ask mine first, and then that'll give folks a few more chances to add their questions. So we heard everybody that was interviewed talk about some of the changes they're seeing. What did you get the sense of that they were most worried about? If you had to pick a thing that they were most worried about, what was that common theme?
Well, it varies. I would say the like I said, the place is dynamic and changing. Deltas are always moving around, and everybody was a little wary of that because most of the big, as we mentioned in the film, the avulsion event happened. I'm a little like, I think it was 120 years ago, 1880 or something like that, 140 years ago. But the avulsion event was one thing that caused all this dynamic change. So people were a little bit wary of what was going to continue to happen, which channels would dry up, what would happen to the lake. And they were equally worried about how those changes would be even further affected by the dam. So there's kind of two unknowns. One unknown is the natural effect of the delta being a delta, but the exacerbation to the dam was always on everybody's mind. Like how bad is this going to be? Are we going to lose the lake completely? Is the lake filling in? That was a common comment from everyone, and that still seems to be the case. They're still talking about what to do to get more water into the lake.
Okay. Beckett Stark has another question. I noticed that there were a couple of shots featuring phragmites. Was it very prevalent from your experience?
Omnipresent, everywhere. And some of those folks in there now, Solomon and Renee Carrier, who you see in the film, who we go on the dog sledding trip with and other places, they're spearheading a program where they burn the phragmites now. So they are going in the winter. Actually, not a few weeks from now, they'll probably start doing some fires, and they go in when the snow has settled, but the ice is still firm, and they go into these phragmites meadows and they burn them down to try to get that stuff under control because it spreads pretty voraciously. But it is everywhere, and it's an invasive.
Yeah. I've got a personal follow-up question to Beckett's. Do you know when that came in? Did they have any sense of about when that came in?
when phragmites hit the delta?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that. I imagine somebody would know that. Some of those, like Tim Jardine might know something at University of Saskatchewan if he's around. Maybe he's in the call tonight. I don't know, but you'd probably have a better bit of information on that stuff. But it's everywhere. I mean, I was in Lake of the Woods not that long ago, and that whole area in Ontario is just full of phragmites. Ontario and Manitoba. Yeah.
Heather Pete Ham's question. You encountered geologists and wildlife biologists in your filming. Did you encounter anyone looking at the plant species there?
That particular the series of people that we encountered were looking at the subsurface geology, the peat layers, the avulsion, the water flow, the hydrology of it all. So in those visits, of which there were many over a course of about a year, no, I would say not. No. But I think there might be some now. Chet, do you maybe know more about that? If there's people in there now doing more plant studies?
Not that I'm aware of. There might be something out of the U of S, but I'm not aware of any researchers who are actively pursuing work in there. Yeah, Heather, maybe an opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll talk. We'll maybe put a funding proposal together there.
there you go. One thing I always thought was interesting and we didn't touch on very much was that the delta is it's kind of where the Precambrian rock from the north meets the rest of the province to the south, which is, obviously not underlined by bedrock. So you've got two major kind of geologic zones encountering one another. And then when it goes through the paw, it's crushed in by the rock around it. So
right.
That affords different kind of plant life opportunities, right? Certain things aren't going to grow on Canadian Shield as well as they might in the parkland. I don't know. But again, I'm a kind of a rank amateur with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my wheels are already turning about potential field tours or projects. Yeah, I think that'd be a great experience up there. Oh yeah, Heather just had a follow-up comment. My thought exactly, Chet. Saul and Renee Carrier are old pals from canoe racing days. Oh, well, there you go. I've got an in with them and I didn't even know that. So that's fantastic. Yeah, keep the comments and questions coming. Let's see. I've got another question here. It seems like a lot of international research is happening within the Delta, but do you get the sense that the Delta is underappreciated in Saskatchewan and or the rest of Canada?
Yeah, I would say that was the case when we made the film, and I think that has been, it's slowly getting more awareness. You hear articles in Canadian Geographic and these kinds of places and canoe magazines and that sort of thing. So it's getting more attention. It's hard to say. I mean, the Saskatchewan government has got they're only interested in resource extraction, it seems. So they're probably not that interested in tourism opportunities, at least not ones that are a little more challenging. So I don't know. There's been, yeah, we'll see. It's getting more awareness. So people outside of, certainly outside of Saskatchewan know more about it, but it's a slow process, but it's getting there. I see another question here about conservation. There has been some moves been made. The Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society has been very progressive in getting things done. They've got some pretty big commitments from Weyerhaeuser. This is a number of years ago now. And I'm probably talking a little bit out of school here because I haven't paid as much attention in the last few years as I used to. But about, oh boy, maybe 7 years back, the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, working with Weyerhaeuser, got Weyerhaeuser to forfeit a whole bunch of their timber licenses on the edge of the Delta to give them over to conservation. So that took those woodlots out of production, out of industrial production. So that, in a sense, is a move towards conservation. There was other moves at the time back then towards making the Saskatchewan River a heritage river. And other things related to getting protection for the Delta. But yeah, forgive my ignorance. I don't know how much of that stuff has moved along. But before we went in to make the film, there was nothing. So it is moving. It's slow and steady, but maybe it's made more progress. Anyone out there know more about it?
Yeah, feel free to comment in the chat for sure. Yeah. So I think we've kind of touched on a little bit of this. There is a focus on the impact of upstream dams on the Delta ecosystem in the film. Can a balance that works for most people and species be achieved? What are your thoughts on this, as well as what you heard from locals?
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth on that. I mean, the problem with the dam, there's a number of problems, like the sediment. We didn't talk about that as much in the film as maybe we could have, but the sediment is being held back by the dam, which means that the water that comes out of those spillways comes out in a hurry, and it has a different relationship to the riverbeds in the way that it scours, or the depositions that it leaves behind. Um, so it's a different kind of water than would naturally flow. Boy, I'm losing track of the question. What was the question? Help me.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Can a balance that works for most people and species be achieved? What are your thoughts on this, as well as what you heard from locals?
So yeah, insofar as you can make a go of letting water through the spillways of the dam, but it's not the right kind of water. So can you get a balance? Well, the delta is still operational. There's water running through it, but that's one of the challenges. And the other big challenge is that people that live in the delta, especially like Saul and Renee, who live pretty close to the spillways relative to everyone else, I mean, they've been flooded out numerous times because the SaskPower opens that spillway and just lets the water fly when there's a water event or a rain event or a flood event. And who's sitting in the path of that waterway? They are. So is that a balance? No. And Solomon and Renee talk about that a little bit in the film. They have to get the regulation in terms of the minimum flows and the maximum flows and get that a little bit more moderated. That would help. That would help people in Cumberland House as well. But definitely those in the Delta, it's far more acute when the water comes in a hurry. So finding a balance, I don't know, you're dealing with SaskPower, who makes, millions of dollars a day off of that the turning of those turbines. I don't know. Guess who's going to win in that argument? Sadly, I'm not a big fan of the Saskatchewan party government, so you don't want to get me wound up.
I've got a question in the chat here. If there's shield rock in the area, do you think there would be critical minerals development in the area?
To the north, yes, indeed. There's development up you're into the I guess, is that the nickel belt up towards Flin Flon and Creighton up to the northeast. So that same geological deposition is not that far away. I just know anecdotally that there has always been geologists poking around, especially in the north area, like south of Hansen Lake. Like if you know your map really well, the northern flank of the Delta is not that far from the Hansen Lake Road and all of those lakes up that way. And that has a lot of mineral exploration over the years, poking around. Nothing major that I'm aware of, but there always could be. That's always the risk.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Your film was released in 2009. We're here in 2022. Have you been back to the area, and what changes have taken place since?
Yep, I've been back lots of times. Going back for a few different things. I've done some filming with other people there, and the phragmites is getting thicker. The Delta is moving. All the channels that we once traveled on are drying up, and new channels are emerging. Like I said, it's so dynamic. But even in a 5-year chunk of time, you'll see a lot of change. The lake is definitely getting smaller, what I could see. But they have challenges. Like, I mean, to get into Cumberland House, you have that 120 kilometers of gravel road that runs quite close to the river most of the time. And that is subject to obviously water events and floods. So, I mean, that's one of the changes I saw the last time I was up, is a lot of work to try to get the road better. So, I mean, these are the struggles of people living in Cumberland House. They're worrying about the Delta and preservation of it, but they also need a road to get in and out. So these are kind of the day-to-day challenges. But I mean, awareness is raised in town. They have a great big sign after we made the film, not that long after, maybe 2 years later, the great big sign announcing that this is the home of the Saskatchewan River Delta. Yeah, I mean, things are changing. Things are in motion a lot. I probably will get up there in the next 4 to 6 weeks actually to go visit again. So I wish it was we were just leapfrogged a little bit more. I could tell you more after I go up there. But I'll
Yeah. Oh,
be up there right around close to ice breakup. I should be visiting. So
oh, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Um, Another question here. What were some of the challenges in making this film?
Well, transport was tricky, but our friend Gary Carrier was incredibly intrepid and always eager to go anywhere at any time. So, in terms of all the water travel we did with him. And then in the winter, we traveled a lot with Solomon and Renee, and the same thing, zipping around on snowmobile or whatever was never much of a problem. So in terms of people helping get us around, everybody was incredibly committed to helping. The challenges are in the summer, the insects are quite incredible. Mosquitoes are I mean, they're hard to, I can't even find the words to describe what that's all about. But those would be the challenges. The severe cold in the winter is something to worry about. We didn't have much in the way of cell coverage back then. I think cell coverage is a little better now. So if you want to communicate with people, that can be tricky. But and transporting yourself up that highway that busted up at the time very badly, in a road in very bad shape back then, which, like I said, has been repaired a lot since then. But that traveling is a challenge. You have to bring a lot of your own food and your own provisions. But Cumberland's getting more and more services there. There's more places to stay in town. There's more people that do eco guiding and that kind of thing. So yeah, all of those things are less than what they were when I was filming. That's for sure.
All right.
But
Yeah, if only you could hire those and teach those mosquitoes how to do drone footage for you, right?
yeah, exactly.
They're big enough. um, let's see. So I don't know if you have a favorite, but who was your favorite interview and why?
Boy, let me think about that a little bit. Yeah, I would hate to say I have a favorite. I like those old timers that were catching the sturgeon. Those two guys were pretty great, and we didn't get enough time with them. But I just love. I mean, they're full of the knowledge. The one guy talks about how far the water used to be way out there. He says, I mean, I would have loved to sit and talk with them for 2 or 3 days, but we only had about 25 minutes with them. So if I had my I could wave a magic wand, I would say I'd like to spend more time with them. But everybody was great. Everybody was forthcoming, and there was always something that brought a new perspective to the knowledge of the Delta. So yeah, but I don't know if that's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean it's your answer, so it's a good answer. Yeah, I remember that too, where they were tagging the sturgeon, and I remember that comment about where the water was. Yeah, that's incredible. I'm sure they've all seen just so much change in that area in their lifetime. Yeah. Um, and kind of speaking of change, this kind of takes us to our next question. Are you more worried or hopeful for the future of the Delta? And what general feeling did you get about the locals' attitudes regarding the Delta's future?
I think compared to 14 years ago, I'm more hopeful. Definitely more hopeful. I think awareness has been raised. People in the Delta and outside of the Delta are now more aware of it. There's been some conservation efforts. So yeah, I'm definitely more hopeful. Even Sask Power has shown a willingness to sit down and talk with people and try to work a few things out. So they're getting there. The communication lines are open now, so that's good. I mean, in general, I don't have data. Like, I don't know about species numbers or habitat loss. I don't know if the moose counts are going up or down, these kinds of things, the fish counts. So if I knew some of those things, maybe I would be more optimistic or less. I don't know. But broadly speaking, I'm probably more optimistic about the Delta than I was at the beginning.
That's good. Yeah. It's nice to see that positive trend then. Yeah. At least in your eyes. Yeah. That's good.
The whole goal of the
I
film, the whole goal of the film was to raise that awareness and do something to set the wheels in motion or help help set the wheels in motion for conservation. And that is, like I said, it is happening. It's just a little bit, it's slow and steady, but it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. At least it's slow and steady. I mean, there are areas that I have seen it go the other way, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So this is good news. Um, Now, kind of along the same lines, what impacts to the local communities are people seeing with the changes to the Delta, and what future changes might be in store? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but maybe there was something that somebody mentioned, could trigger something down the line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing, I think we allude to it in the film, but we don't spend much time on it. Commercial fishing is almost non-existent now on the lake. It's too shallow, so there's just not. It's not a great place to fish anymore. The numbers aren't as high as they used to be, so that's gone down. Um, Ecotourism has gone up, so there's more and more ecotourism, and there's always been guiding, hunting and guiding, and that kind of thing. So I guess those are the changes. Like, I mean, a little less fish harvest and more, nature harvest, beauty, ecotourism. That's a different kind of harvesting, right? So, and that's another way that's good. That's bringing people to appreciate the beauty of the place. So those would be
Yeah,
the changes.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, keep your questions coming in the chat box. Um, Another question, also kind of along the same vein, with the future of the Delta and everything. What actions do the locals want to see happen to protect the Delta? What did they mention to you when you were talking to them?
Well, again, yeah, I think ecotourism was kind of the new bright spot on the horizon for a lot of folks looking to that, and that's starting to be more and more common. There's more and more outfitters that are just taking people out onto the land and out into the delta. So I think that was probably the big one. The road getting better and more travelable, if that's a word. I don't know that it is, but I think that helps people too. The ability to get in and out of the delta to go get provisions and go to school or go to work. The shorter that travel period is, the better for people, the better for the community. I mean, before there was a bridge there, for instance, which we don't touch on at all, but before there was a bridge, people would have to drive across the river and hope that they didn't fall through. That wasn't that many years ago. I mean, I think the bridge was built in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. So there's been a lot of changes that way. So now people can race down that increasingly better road than it used to be to Nipawin and get themselves things, go to Prince Albert, go to Saskatoon, hop on a plane in Saskatoon. These were all things that were a lot harder to do decades ago. So that's another hopeful thing.
Oh,
Oh,
and then we
somebody had
we
an
had, yeah, just to mention here, is Cumberland House still reliant on a ferry for access? And then you just answered that in the question. So yeah, I didn't even know about the bridge. So
yeah,
that's not an area I'm really familiar with.
yeah, it might have
Um,
been the 90s. Somebody out there might know. If anyone knows, please type it into the chat. But maybe the 90s. Yeah.
um, let's see, another question here. Was there a place in the Delta that was particularly special to you? And if so, why?
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, there's so many places I was taken, so many special places that people took me. I mean, some of the footage, if you recall the film, when Gary took us on the boat and we went, I think he called it the James Bond channel, James Bond 007, those where we're meandering back and forth at high speed with the boat. I mean, those places take your breath away. They're so beautiful. And the faster you go, the more it's like a ride at the fair or something. Pretty special. But I mean, the places we went on snowmobile and with Solomon in the middle of winter were amazing and so tranquil. And places we paddled with him, and I mean, every place is beautiful. They all have something special about them. But it's every place is tranquil and full of bird life. And I mean, it's just, and winter is amazing there. There's all the tracks because there is a bit of snowmobile traffic in the Delta, but there's a lot of areas where nobody goes. And you get into those areas and you can just see highways of animal tracks, coyote and mink and rabbit, and fox and wolf and everything traveling every which way. It's pretty amazing. And when you go with
Oh, I think you froze. Oh, I think Ian's having a little bit of trouble with connection here.
oh, we're oh, can you hear me now? Hello.
I can hear you. Yeah, you're back. Your video is maybe a little bit jittery.
Back.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, you're good.
Back again.
Can you rewind your answer 30 seconds?
Yes, he was talking about the highway. Did you get that part about all the animal prints in the snow?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's all I was saying. Is just this amazing kind of narrative of what might have happened in the last, X amount of days looking at all the tracks. I thought that's one of the more beautiful things you can imagine, because you just, your mind is racing what these animals did and when and how. That's the story of the Delta, especially in the winter. A lot of activity.
Yeah. Did you get to go out on dog sled?
We didn't. I didn't. No, we did go on the sled. We did go on the sled. Yes, we did. But for the most part, we traveled by snowmobile, but we did get the dog sled out for a while. And it's a
Jealous.
great place to be when you're behind. I must say, and I don't want to gross anyone out too much, but when you're behind a team of outdoor dogs, dog sled dogs, and they're running at full speed, there's an odor that I have never quite experienced before. So that's something you don't understand from watching the film. But being behind those dogs is pretty crazy. But it's pretty amazing. It's a beautiful sound hearing them, work and pull that sled. It's quite special.
There's another kind of along the same lines here. Did you go on an airboat? It looked like one would need a 5-point harness or seatbelt.
Yes, and as compared to going behind the dogs, going on an airboat is very, very loud. You have to wear earmuffs. They're amazing though. You can go over pieces of land if you have enough speed. I think we did some footage of that where we kind of climb over a bit of a levee with these airboats. But it allows you to get into all kinds of places that you couldn't otherwise get into. But they're extremely loud. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
So you got to experience several different modes of transportation there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Maybe all of them. Yeah. I don't think anything was off the menu there.
Yeah, we've done everything.
Yeah. We still have time for a few more questions. There haven't been so many in the chat lately. Is there anything else that hasn't been covered by a question that you'd like to convey to the participants about the Delta or your experiences?
Yeah, I think I said it before, but I maybe reiterated that the community is really welcoming and they like to have visitors there, and they love people's curiosity. And I think if anyone after watching this film is curious about going up there, just go. Get on the phone. You can find Gary, or Solomon and Renee are a little harder to find by phone, but phone Gary and talk to him. He'll take you everywhere. He'll put you up in his house if there's nowhere to stay. Like their hospitality is amazing. And they'll take you anywhere you want to go, right? And if not Gary, he'll know somebody else. Like they're really great people up there, and it's just get on up there. And once you get in there and see it and get to know it yourself, you're kind of hooked. It has a really special place in my heart after spending all that time there.
One more question. What is your current / next project? Heather Pete Ham wants to know.
We're doing we've been doing gardening series for the broadcaster Vision Television. So we just we're into our 4th season of a series called Ageless Gardens, and it's gardeners across Canada that talk about gardening, and they talk about aging and how aging and gardening are kind of helpful for one another. The health benefits of gardening, if you will. And we kind of toggle back and forth to another series that we just finished called Visionary Gardeners. And that is premiering March 7th on Vision Television, our first season of that one. And that's called Visionary Gardeners. And that's another one we traveled with gardeners. We visited gardeners all over Canada. And this one we talk more about sort of the inner workings of the mind of the gardener, if you will, and the philosophies of gardening and the belief systems. And we go really quite deep with these gardeners. If anybody out there knows anything about gardening, they know that gardeners are often very profound people, lots of ideas and beliefs and philosophies. So we kind of go after that. But that's March 7th on Vision Television, Mondays, starting March 7th on Monday night.
All right. I don't see any more questions. That sounds like a great series. I encourage people to check that out. Thank you so much, Ian, for your time. This was really great. I want to give the audience a little bit of context behind this. We just got the screening rights to the film. I thought it was a great film. I thought everybody needed to see it. So we were going to have this in conjunction with our annual general meeting events. And Mark, the person I was dealing with at 291, he said, "Oh, Ian's going to be in your neck of the woods while you're doing this film screening. Why don't you just maybe we can arrange some kind of Q&A session?" And I thought, this is fantastic. I didn't even think that was a possibility. So you all have been very accommodating. It's been a great experience, and I'm so glad that we got this context behind the film. That this has been a real treat for all of us. So I just wanted to thank you. Yeah, there's a bunch of thank yous in the comments here.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has just been fantastic. I want to go to the Delta now. I think we should all go. Let's get the ball rolling on this. So thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Ian. And have a great night. This will be posted on our YouTube channel at some point. So check our social media feeds out. For anybody who isn't registered for our annual general meeting, I think you all are. It's this Saturday, the 26th. And tell your friends there's still time to register. They won't get the Q&A session. They missed that, but they'll still get a great lineup of speakers. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.